Well, hello everybody. It sure is good to see you again, and wonderful to talk with you again. You're my favorite people. Today we're going to talk about creativity and imagination, and so this should be pretty fun, because isn't that when we've had the most fun in our lives, when we've used our imagination? All the music that you're going to hear in this video is music that was created and recorded by me down here in this basement studio. As you can see, my basement is not treated acoustically, so sound bounces off the ceilings and the walls, so it's not going to sound all that great. It's not going to sound professional, and I have cheap equipment. And also I have no talent for sound engineering and producing and mixing and all that. So just bear that in mind. And you know, one thing about being down here, I always thought it was cool to imagine myself being like Tom Schultz from the band Boston. He recorded their first album, which was a platinum album, in this very small basement, smaller than my basement, that was in the home that he was renting at the time. It always kind of gets my imagination going when I see these old bands and these old studios. Like here, for example, is a picture of Steely Dan that I always thought was cool. This is from the back cover of their second album. But anyway, I thought it would be fun to include my own music, considering the subject area of this video.
Lord have mercy, man, are you ever going to get started? Roll tape, and let's go on a trip.
Alrighty then. Well, I've always been interested in fantastic things, you know, superheroes, comic books, science fiction, those kinds of things, and my parents and my brother and sister were not at all. So it was kind of like I was this weird space alien that had been dropped into their home in 1968, and they didn't know what to do with me. Now, I've always found that autistic people seem to have very rich, deep, vivid imaginations. Now, why is this? Well, I'm not really sure, but I know in my own case, I found the world to be kind of an unpleasant place when I was a child. So it was nice to kind of create my own conditions in my mind, you know, and to create scenarios where I felt comfortable and accepted, and where I even excelled. And sometimes I found real life, or whatever you want to call it, to not be all that exciting, so I kind of turbocharged it just a little bit with my imagination. And this isn't going to sound too scientific, but we just have brains that work differently. They're very active, and sometimes we need to go beyond just what our physical senses can perceive, and it's almost like our brains, our minds, are our sixth sense. And we autistic people have a very rich inner world and life, so when it gets expressed on the outside, it's pretty impressive. Here's another tangent. my best work, creative work, like music for example, nobody will ever hear my best work, because if it's being recorded and I'm aware of it, or if I'm being listened to or watched and I'm aware of it, I'm very self-conscious and I don't perform to the best of my abilities. It's that whole thing of being perceived. I can't stand being watched while I'm trying to do something. And so that's been an issue with me when I try to express my creativity. And I bet a lot of you, if not all of you, can relate to that. Now, I've always been interested in fantastic things, like superheroes and science fiction and those kinds of things. And my parents and my brother and sister never have been. So I don't think they knew what to make of me and what to do with me. It was like they had this space alien dropped into their home in 1968 and they just didn't know what to do with it. My best memories are of creating things and imagining things. I know as a child I would sit there and stare off into space and imagine things. I was never really all there or fully present, I guess. And my grandpa even gave me a nickname, Lost John, because I looked like I was lost in another world all the time. I'd walk in the room and he'd say, "Oh, there goes old Lost John." So I was always imagining things, and like if I was riding in the car, back then we had to roll down windows, so I would get the little window lever and pretend like it was a gear shifter, and like I was driving the car and I was in a race, or I'd pick up a stick that looked like a gun and act like I was on patrol, like you see here in this picture. I know, like for a couple of years we had this ski boat when I was a kid, and I wasn't really interested in skiing, but when we go out on that boat, I'd pretend like I was like somebody like James Bond or something on some kind of an adventure. It was really cool to do that, and that just made the whole thing more interesting to me. And I always wanted to explore and go off, like on field trips, school field trips. I would break away from the crowd, and I always got in trouble for that or scolded for it. I would do that on family trips and vacations too. And one story too, I wandered off. I was probably about 3 years old, and my mom was in the kitchen making something, cooking something or whatever, and she lost track of me, and apparently I left the house, and I was found much later over a mile away from the house. Some older woman saw me walking around by myself out there on the road and picked me up and brought me home. So that was something I always did. I guess I was always searching for my own little world. The very first thing I remember that really captured my imagination was this book here. It's called The Hat, and it is by Tommy Ungerer. And my mom read it to me once when I was a child, and it is just a wonderful book. Looking through it, there's all kinds of cool scenes in it. This hat just blows off this rich man's head and it lands on this other man's head far away. And the scenery and the adventures that this hat goes on is really something else. And it captured my imagination. This was a world that was very different than the one I'd ever seen. And the night scenes particularly, for some reason, those really captured my imagination. And that very last picture with the hat just flying off with the moon in the background, that just, that really interested me. The next thing that captured my imagination was, again, I was 4 years old. I was in preschool, and we used to watch Popeye, and I thought he was so cool. And they would always be like on a ship or a hot air balloon or on a plane or in some kind of fantastic setting, and it captured my imagination. And now, one thing about old Popeye, they had the same plot every single time. He and Bluto, who later became Brutus, would chase after Olive Oyl. Brutus would beat the crap out of Popeye. Olive Oyl would walk off with Brutus. Popeye would get a hold of some spinach, beat the crap out of Brutus, and then Olive Oyl would walk off with Popeye. Now, I never understood the attraction to this brazen young hussy named Olive Oyl, but to each their own. And then next, pretty much the same time as that, I got interested in Speed Racer. What a cool cartoon that was to me. And the car that he had, it was called the Mach 5. Now, what really interested me about Speed Racer was this character called Racer X. Now, how cool is that? Racer X. And he was this mysterious person that would just show up, and he wasn't there all the time. In fact, he would make brief appearances, which made him even more mysterious and interesting. And he was kind of his own loner type person, and those were always the characters that interested me the most.